Hello, thank you so much, Speaker Pelosi.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you.
Right. we don't get that kind of applause, ever.
Or anything close.
Well, we want to kick off the day. Today is Equal Pay Day.
Yes.
And we wanted to talk to you, get your read. What are Democrats doing to highlight that?
Well, first of all, we passed it in the House last week, and Rosa DeLauro has introduced this legislation every Congress, and we passed it in the House when we had the majority before, but we couldn't get the 60 votes in the Senate. Now we're hoping that with the advance in technology that is there and social media, to have the public sentiment weigh in on the Senate in a different way. We're very excited about equal pay. It's part of our For the People agenda. Lower health care costs by lowering the cost of prescription drugs, bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America, and that relates directly to what you talked about here with mobility. But part of that is equal pay for equal work for women. And H.R. 1, a cleaner government. Lower health care, bigger paycheck, cleaner government. And in that middle piece that addresses the economic security of America's working families, equal pay for men and women doing equal work is very important. So today we'll have our press event to beat the drum that this is the day that women start earning money for the work that they've done for the first 3 months of the year compared to a man without pay.
Now, you mentioned another plank in your agenda is lowering prescription drug costs, lowering healthcare costs. We reported, and other people have reported, that your staff is holding preliminary conversations, not negotiations. Not negotiations, I know that, but conversations with the White House. Could you give us an update on that?
Well, the issue of health care, I mean, when the president has instructed his Department of Justice to just eliminate the Affordable Care Act, them's fighting words. I mean, them's fighting words. This is something that is so central to the economic security as well as the health security of America's working families. It is, as Martin Luther King said, of all the inequalities, the one that is the most inhumane is the inequality in access to health care because people can die. And the president seems oblivious to that. In the campaign, the issue of health care and pre-existing condition benefit was an issue that people focused on, that the Republicans misrepresented their point of view on. Over and over again, they had voted to eliminate that benefit, but all of a sudden it was their new best friend, and now they're going to eliminate it again, try to. And the central, though, is to economic security is the cost of prescription drugs. It's just a stunning thing across the kitchen tables across America. And we are hopeful that 2 areas that we can work with the president on. One is lowering the cost of prescription drugs. He says that he wants to do that. And the other is a very big infrastructure legislation or initiative, legislation that turns into law, that turns into more mobility for the American people. But not only that, it's transportation, it's also water, it's also broadband, it's a number of things. So the prescription drug issue is, we have said, in 2006 when we won the first time, our 6 for 06 had 6 items on the agenda. Raise the minimum wage, there were 6 items that our House Democrats concluded were the priorities in the election. 5 of them became law. 1 did not, enabling the secretary to negotiate for prescription drug prices. Again, we couldn't get 60 votes in the Senate. But the public awareness of the impact that this has on their people's health and financial security is such now that we're hopeful that the president, he hasn't so far. When he had a chance to do that, he pulled his punch, and don't take it from me, the market went up like that for pharma that day because he pulled his punch. But now hopefully we can find a place where we can make a difference in the lives of the American people. Again, 2 places. If he's insistent on his, I think, wrong attitude toward the Affordable Care Act, and now what is he saying today? It's like Nixon's secret plan. I have health. Oh, you're all too young to know. Nixon had a secret plan. Read it in the history books. It's history to you. It was my youth. But anyway, Nixon had a secret plan in the war in Vietnam. This is his secret plan. They're not going to pass it until after the 2020 election.
I want to ask you.
And he could view it from Mar-a-Lago all week.
I want to ask you, today was the day Democrats had set for Attorney General Bill Barr to deliver the Mueller report to Capitol Hill. Do you think he will? And what are the repercussions as it appears that he is not going to?
Well, the American people deserve and want the truth. Overwhelmingly, you see that. Whatever the truth may, let the chips fall where they may. Let's show us the truth. And there is no reason why they couldn't be putting some of this out if they have certain, and I, as one of the longest serving, well, as the longest serving person on intelligence, I understand sources and methods, but that's no excuse for hiding the truth from the American people. So we'll just see as we go forward. He's saying now maybe the middle of April. It keeps getting a little closer, but there will be a release of the Mueller report.
Did you have you spoken to Attorney General Barr about this?
No.
So, what gives you the confidence to say that that you will see this?
Our old friend, public sentiment. That is the biggest force, and you are very much a part of it. Public sentiment is everything. Abraham Lincoln. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, just about nothing. He said that. And he was right then, and he's right now. Whether we're talking about equal pay for equal work, whether we're talking about releasing the report, we're talking about a number of subjects. The public awareness and the public weighing in can just simply not be ignored without paying a price.
Mm-hmm.
You're a member of the Gang of Eight, which gets briefed on the most sensitive briefings in America. Were you briefed on the investigation as it was being undertaken?
Which part of the investigation?
Some
parts of it. No, not the Mueller investigation.
Yeah, that's what we mean.
No, we couldn't know that, nor should we have known that. That's now we're talking about an investigation that is could end up in the courts. That's not where we go.
And it's been interesting to see how Democrats have handled it, including you. I mean, most of your leadership, including you, have talked much more robustly about your agenda than about all of these investigations. I mean, you've really tried to focus, and I think Democrats have tried to focus much more on your legislative agenda than the investigations. And I'm curious what you see the politics are behind that.
Well, it's not a question of politics. It's what we said we would do when we ran for office. We said we would be for the people. Lower health care costs, bigger paychecks, cleaner government. And that is the agenda that we have brought to the Congress. Winning the election enabled us to do some other things, like pass H.R. 8, which is the gun safe background checks legislation, which we're very proud to have passed. We will be bringing up legislation to protect the Dreamers. We do have H.R. 5, which is our legislation to end discrimination against the LGBTQ community. So there are a few other things that winning enabled us to do as we promoted our agenda. But we are like a laser, jackhammer, whatever you want to call it, focused on making that happen for the American people. And that's not political. It's our purpose. That's who we are as Democrats.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up on that? I mean, what's your relationship right now with Mitch McConnell? And do you have discussions with him on any of these items on your agenda? I imagine he doesn't line up as closely as some of these items as you do.
Well, I don't know that Mitch is against infrastructure and transportation legislation. I just think it should be paid for, and I share that view. Mitch and I go way back because we're appropriators. I was forged two places in the Congress, intelligence and appropriations, both committees that really tend toward bipartisanship. They used to, not intelligence. Talk about disintegration of our responsibility. What the Republicans did to the Intelligence Committee was shameful, but we're so proud of Adam Schiff and how he's bringing it back. But so we have that background as appropriators over the years. In fact, I was ranking on one of the committees that he was, Foreign Ops. Again, we're talking in the 90s. So we understand that left to their own devices, the appropriators can get the job done. It's just when the poison pills descend from the Republicans on high, whether it relates to prohibitions on any investments in climate or a woman's right to choose or any of that, that it becomes problematic. However, we have had some conversation about what we do about the caps and where we go from here. We have a working report. I'm not saying it's where I think it will be, because look at the White House. That's a major condition for I don't know, left to his own devices what Mitch would do, but there's no question the White House weighs in there.
We've talked a lot about infrastructure as a way to potentially work with Republicans. The White House has said a lot about infrastructure spending in our book, The Hill to Die On, which comes out a week from today.
Go buy it.
Congratulations.
We're excited. He said the president said he thought he could work with Democrats easier than Republicans. When we spoke before the election, when you were on the campaign trail, you had said that you hadn't really had many conversations with the president more recently. Have you had any substantive level conversations with the White House on this?
Well, I don't think I've had a conversation. Well, let me just say, 75 to 80% of the conversations I've had with the president have always talked about infrastructure to a greater or less extent. Most recently, our St. Patrick's Day lunch with the Taoiseach, which is the tradition, the Reagan Tip O'Neill tradition, and then with the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Ireland, joining us. So we did have a chance to chat at the table, and that very day, Secretary Mnuchin had testified in the Ways and Means Committee that they would maybe go as high as $1.5 trillion on it. When the White House had a chance with the House and Senate Republican, and having the White House, they did pathetically meager $200 billion infrastructure plan. Well, the Society of Civil Engineers, the American Society of Civil Engineers, says we have like a $4 trillion deficit. So this in infrastructure in our country. So $200 billion was just, it was pathetic. And I believe that the president knows that now, that wasn't a good plan. For example, in the plan, if it used to be that if a community wanted to participate, they had to ante up. So it was 80-20. Federal government puts in 80, locals put in 20, so that they had skin in the game, recourse, and showed the commitment of that area to the project. The administration reversed that and said the locals will put up 80% and the federal government will put up 20. Well, thanks for nothing, because there's no way the localities could put up 80. This is a national, just one of the most important things that President Eisenhower did, the interstate highway. You have to think big about this. It's about surface transportation, yes, high-speed rail, mass transit, roads, bridges, and all the rest. It's also about our water supply. Some of these systems are 100 years old, made of wood and brick. You want a glass of water from there? There are issues of clean water and all the rest that need to be addressed. And then it's the issue of broadband and what that means, and all the things you talked about in terms of Uber and transportation. Well, that wasn't a transportation issue, that's a technology issue. Without the technology, you don't have many of these other initiatives that are out there. So the broadband is central piece of it. So it's beyond just roads and bridges, which is very important. It's also about school construction, it's about housing construction, depending how much money and how we pay for it, where we can go at $1.5 trillion used, leveraged, whether it's with bonding, all kinds of things. You can get a lot out of $1.5 trillion. So hopefully the president has gone from $200 billion to $1.5 trillion, and in a ways that we cannot add to the deficit, but to grow the economy.
What's a realistic timeline for this kind of a package? I mean, is it before the
Depends
midterms?
on the White House. No, we're ready. We're ready. I mean, we're ready discreetly Transportation Committee has one piece of it. Energy and Commerce has another piece. Education and Labor has another piece. We've already marked up in Ed and Labor. And we want to do this in a green way because you have to be thinking of the future. You can't do it in the 1950s. You have to do it looking to 2050. When you're talking about driverless cars, the engineering of the roads, it's a whole different, wonderful world out there. But again, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for job growth. It's a quality of life issue for people not to be in the car for 45 minutes for a 15-minute ride. It's a clean air initiative to get people out of their cars and into mass transit. It's product to market, especially produce, where timing is important. It's everything it's about promoting commerce, cleaning the air, improving the quality of life, creating jobs as we build the infrastructure, but again, creating further jobs as we promote commerce.
So you say you're ready, and it's really just the White House needs to
well, we're ready to talk. We're ready to talk to see where we can find our priorities. This issue has never been a partisan issue. Over time, we've always been able to work together in a bipartisan issue, and it relates to what communities bring forward. That we have an expression that then they have a proposal that they come to ask for funding. That if it is chosen, that dirt will fly. That it's not going to be money set aside for law, and it's in courts and the this and the that. That dirt will fly. So the consensus in the community has been really important, and usually very nonpartisan. It's really more technical and what is the need, what is the opportunity, and what will make dirt fly. So the only time it became kind of political was when President Obama was president. Of course, they wanted to stop anything that he did. And we did get an infrastructure bill thanks to, can you imagine the combination of Senator Barbara Boxer and Senator Inhofe? But it came together for a bill, and it took us down the path, but it certainly was modest compared to what our needs are.
Well, this week, the White House, with some of the big news that's out this morning, is about the president's desire to shut down the border, the southern border with Mexico, close all ports of entry. He believes it to be a way to pressure the Mexican government to do more, in his words, to stem illegal immigration. What are the repercussions if the president, I assume you don't want him to close the southern border, so we'll start with that premise. What could Democrats do to weigh in here?
Well, I was interested in how you phrased the question. You said, he believes. Does he know? I mean, he believes. He believes? He believes. Okay, so he believes. That what was the next word you used? Like, it's a good idea?
Well, no, he believes that the Mexican government will feel pressured to do more to stop illegal immigration.
But what the president seems to forget is that the border is a two-way thing. Now, if you visit there, and I just did recently, I was in Laredo, where like $91 billion worth of trade comes into the United States, goes all over the country. You see that it is a community with a border going through it. But much of the activity at the border is about commerce, it's about tourism, some of it's about immigration, more of it now than it used to be. But it is people going back and forth, families back and forth, and the rest. The president really doesn't understand that. And so I don't know on the basis of what he believes. He may have decided, I can't imagine he believes that that would be a good idea. But again, we've had other items on the agenda where it's hard to understand why he would come to that conclusion. I think he's going to have enough trouble in his own house on that. Certainly the Republican senators from the region have made their concerns known. We'll see if they count for anything in his belief system.
He's also threatened to cut off aid to Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. Did the White House tell you this in advance, and do you believe he actually unilaterally can do that?
Well, again, with stiff competition, mind you, this is one of his worst ideas. But it's just, it covers so much territory that it's hard to say worst. This is not a good idea. In other words, if the fact is we want to keep people at home, the point is to have the resources that make that more feasible. So no, I don't know who's advising him there. And advising is even a word. I don't know who's poisoning his mind on some of these subjects, but it's not a good idea to say, I'm going to cut off the assistance there. In fact, I think that we should even do more, and in fact, we should make sure that the resources are used for the purpose that they are designed for, and that is to improve the safety and quality of life of people so that they do not feel the urgency to go endanger their families, to travel so far, to take the chance for seeking asylum. You understand that seeking asylum is a legitimate entry into our country. And to say we're going to shut down the border is something that is so foreign to who we are as a country. Our decisions have to be values-based, respect for dignity and worth of people. And what's happening now is all wrong. But shutting down the border and cutting off the money are probably in competition for two of the worst ideas. Well, the wall, too. Let's not forget our friend the wall.
Can Democrats do anything, though, to reverse that if he does cut off the aid?
Isn't that a congressional prerogative to how you spend money in that nature?
Well, yeah, but of course there's always the Senate of the United States, which is controlled by the Republicans. But again, left to their own devices, I think the Appropriations Committee can do something about that. But let's take it to a higher plane. Let's just have a values discussion. The president needs to be a person of faith, and I believe that he is. People of faith across the country think in a different way about immigrants. Actually, we had testimony from when he did the Muslim ban, what he can call it, whatever he wants, the Muslim ban. People all turned out in such numbers opposing that. But even in our testimony, whether it was diplomats saying this is harmful, whether it was military saying it's going to hurt our interpreters who help us in anything if we promise them they can come to the country. But what was interesting was the evangelicals. The American Association of Evangelicals, or whatever the title is, that association, they were represented there, and their testimony was very clear. The crown jewel of America's humanitarianism is our refugee resettlement program. I just met with them a month or so ago. Their organization was here en masse, and I quoted it back to them, and they embraced what they had said at that time. So the people of faith, the religious community, have a different view of the dignity and worth of people and the rights of people to seek asylum in any country. It doesn't mean you get it. You have to apply for it. You have to meet the criteria. But you have the right to do that in a world of respect for the dignity and worth of people.
Now, I wonder how you think this dovetails with what the president's advisors say is his top priority, which is rewriting NAFTA, the USMCA, which he has said, the White House has told us countless times, we're going to leave this to Nancy Pelosi. This is her decision about how she moves this and what she does.
That's right.
So I wonder your both top-line view on this and how something like shutting down the southern border would impact those talks and impact your United States relationship with Mexico.
Well, let's regard shutting down the border as a notion that can't possibly rise to the level of an idea. Right? I mean, he's a notion monger. Okay, and it plays some places, you know, it's a applause line, but it's not an idea. So, so let's hope that there's some level of maturity at the White House that says, cute, but, you know, So in terms of, we all hope that we would be able to, 25 years later, renegotiate anything that is out there. Everything should be subjected to some scrutiny, and there's some opportunity. But you don't have, I myself voted for NAFTA the first time. So I'm inclined to see if we can't improve on that. I do think I was burned by it. I don't think it lived up to what I don't think it intended to, and I say this because it came out of the Clinton administration. So the representations that were made were not, either they were not sincere or they just didn't live up to it. But for whatever it is, this needs to, I think it's important to renegotiate almost anything 25 years, but here we are. So what are in terms of that, the concerns that our members have, because it's really up to where the votes are, the concerns that our members have are workers' rights, the environment, and issues that relate to pharmaceuticals. Those are the issues. The overarching concern that we have is, even if you had the best language in the world in that, if you don't have enforcement, you ain't got nothing. It's just the way it is. You have to have strong enforcement provisions. Now, one of the things that the Mexican government has to do before we could even consider it is to pass legislation about workers' rights in Mexico. I could go into detail on it, but suffice to say it's that. I keep emphasizing, you're all wordsmiths, you're in the business, the word unless. Unless does not mean unless you do this, we can't do this. Unless doesn't mean if you do this, then we will support it. Unless you do this, we can't even consider it. Mm-hmm. So don't take unless to mean if you do this, we'll do this. Right. Because we have to see that they pass the legislation, that they have the factors in place that will make sure that it is implemented, and they demonstrate some commitment, sincerity, because it's a big issue how workers are treated in Mexico. And to lift up our own workers, you don't do that by suppressing workers in other countries. It's an exploitation on both sides of the border. So what I just mentioned, the three: workers, environment, pharmaceuticals. But overarching biggest issue, enforcement. How does this work? And so the question is, do we have some of the provisions? We're saying that enforcement has to be in the treaty, not in the implementing legislation. Implementing legislation only bears on how we act. It doesn't have to bear on how all three countries act. But I'm optimistic. It'll take some time. We have to see the evidence of what's happening, not only that they pass the bill, but they implement the policy. And again, this is a whole session. We had the ambassador, who has been very gracious, Ambassador Lighthouser. I don't know if we call him ambassador or...
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Okay. But he's been very gracious and open to listening to the concerns that members have. But again, no enforcement, no treaty.
I want to shift gears a little bit. The 2020 election seems like it's right around the corner. We are covering it every day. I want to get your sense of the Democratic field and, in particular, the allegations against Joe Biden.
Well, first of all, let me just congratulate the field for their courage to run, for the why. I say to candidates, our candidates for the House, tell people your why. Why are you running? What is your vision for our country? What is it that you bring to the table that you know? Is it about climate? Is it about education? Is it about security? Is it about fairness in our economy? What is it that you can show your knowledge and judgment on? So why, what, how do you intend to make something happen here? So show us your vision, show us your knowledge, show us your strategic thinking. Many candidates, all of them, have a beautiful vision of our country. They know their subjects. They have plans to get things done. We just have to see which of them connects. This is all up here who connects with the American people. And I say that if you're running for Congress or if you're running for President of the United States. Let me flat out say, any one of the candidates who has announced that he or he is running or is thinking of running would be a better president of the United States than the president occupant of the White House. No question. In fact, yesterday in New York, we had a presentation from over 20 of our freshman women. Anita Lowy was conducting one of the panels there, and she said, there are several presidents in this mix right then and there, 3 months into Congress. Just fabulous, because they know their purpose. And these candidates, authenticity means everything. When they show their purpose and their foundation for it all, authenticity is the most important element, that people then have trust. Whether they agree with you on everything or not, they trust that you will do what you say, or that you will listen to them and what it means to them in their lives. So I think we have a beautiful field of candidates, and yesterday listening to over 20 House members was the most invigorating thing. So I think listening to over 20, I don't know if we get up to 20, but whatever the number is, more power to each and every one of them.
But you've known Joe Biden for 30-something years, right? So, I mean, what is your reaction to these allegations? Now there's 2 people who have said that he made them feel uncomfortable. Is it disqualifying, and what is your reaction to that?
I don't think it's disqualifying, because I think disqualifying is with what your intention is. I do think this about communication in general, beyond this. I'm a member of the Straight Arm Club. I mean, I'm a straight armor and all of this. Just pretend you have a cold and I have a cold. But what I think that it's important for the Vice President and others to understand is, it isn't what you intended, it's how it was received. And that's generally about communication in general. If people don't think they're being communicated with, even in your marriage, if your spouse doesn't think you're communicating, you ain't communicating, even if you think, but I did this and I did that. And so yeah, it's how it is received. So to say, I'm sorry that you were offended, is not an apology. I'm sorry I invaded your space, but not I'm sorry you were offended. Because what's that? That's not accepting the fact that people think differently about communication, whether it's a handshake, a hug. Now, as you said, I know Joe Biden a long time. My grandchildren love Joe Biden. I mean, he's an affectionate person to children, to senior citizens, to everyone. That's just the way he is, but that's just not the way. Join the Straight Arm Club with me, if you will. And also, for example, my grandchildren, when they were little, like 5 and 6, now they're more 10 and 11, they would say, play games, and then they'd say, open sesame, except we don't say sesame, we say open Biden. That's the magic word, because he was just so lovely to them and paid attention to them. But he doesn't understand, you know, he has to understand in the world that we're in now that people's space is important to them, and what's important is how they receive it, not necessarily how you intended it.
We are almost out of time, so I want to shift gears to the House, the majority. You are almost 100 days in. Yeah. Give yourself a grade for how House Democrats are doing so far.
A+. A+.
Are we grading on a curve, or are we grading straight up?
Any way you want to do it, certainly on a curve we go beyond A+ compared to what went before. But again, for our agenda, you know, our top 10 issues, HR 1, we passed that. That is something we're going around the country. It's really important for us to give people the assurance that their voice is as important as any voice in Washington, D.C., to reduce the role of dark special interest money And that enables people to believe that we really can do something about climate if the fossil fuel industry is not dominating in a dark way, that we can do something about gun safety if the gun lobbies are not dominating in a dark way. Gave $30 million to the Trump campaign is what I understand. And so whether we think that there's a big difference between Democrats and Republicans in terms of all of this, but the public doesn't see it that way. They paint everybody with the same brush, so we just have to change it. And I salute John Sarbanes of Maryland for his leadership on H.R. 1. He's worked on it for a long time. It was the priority issue for our freshman class coming in, and we passed it, and now we're going to continue the drumbeat. Lower health care, bigger paychecks, cleaner government. Again, on those issues that we talked about, we have either passed, we've either introduced, marked up in committee, had hearings, marked up in committee, or passed on the floor already most of the agenda we put forth in the first 100 days, which won't be until another
couple weeks,
10 days more or something like that. I think it's the 12th. But we have big hoop-de-doo in that regard. I'm so proud of our members because you know what? It's so beautifully diverse. Think of this. 60% of our caucus are women, people of color, LGBTQ. That's an applause line. And when the Watergate babies came in, again, read it in the history books, when they came in, it was big class, it was historic numbers. Not one of them had a gavel in the first year. 18 freshmen are chairs of subcommittees. 18 freshmen have a gavel. 10 of them women. More than half women have gavels in this class. So I say to them, our diversity is our strength. Our unity is our power. And that's how we have to use our leverage vis-a-vis the White House, but also in conveying our message to the American people so they're on board as President Lincoln suggested.
Two more very quick questions, and we're almost out of time. Why do you think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and some of the couple other freshmen get so much attention?
Oh, I think in this, good for them. You know, again, we're a big tent from left to right. And as I say to some of the new members coming in, I don't know what your issue is, but being a liberal from San Francisco, I got that sign in my basement, and I carried it 30 years ago, pushing strollers, more than 30 years, pushing strollers, so as an activist myself. But I think we're in, beautifully, nicely, positively, we're in a world of technology where the Twitter followers are a measure of recognition, and God bless them all.
And just one last quick question. Something that Ann and I write in our book is about how Donald Trump was, and he said this publicly many times, he really wanted to help you become speaker. You did it on your own.
My own? He didn't want me to become speaker. Anything he says, turn it upside down. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. That's just a good rule of thumb on the scale. And whatever he says, it's the opposite. He's always projecting. Anything that he says, if he's criticizing somebody, it means he knows that's his own exposure. He projects his own weaknesses, his own insecurities on other people. This is a very serious matter for our country, and this election is going to be very important. I intend to have the House won by this November, to have our candidates so fortified, so strengthened that it will deter any serious opposition to them, because we intend to hold the, let me say it 3 times, majority, majority, majority. And it's important for us to win the House, and we must, of course. The Senate, I think we can do, but ours being completely ready at the retail level, getting out our vote and that, and then help to win the White House. I think it's very important for our country. It's about our Constitution. It's about separation of power. It's about Article 1, the legislative branch, a separate, co-equal branch of government. And this not being respected by the second branch of government. So we have, this isn't about politics. This isn't about Democrats or Republicans. That would be small. This is about patriotism. As our founders said at the time, the times have found us. The times have found us now to support our democracy, to honor our oath of office, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. We always say this is the most crucial election of all time, and they just keep getting more crucial. But this is a very important election. This one in 2018 was very important to give us leverage, numbers, leverage to counter what was happening in the White House. But we now have to win that election. Any one of those candidates would be a great president of the United States.
Speaker Pelosi, we are all out of time. Thank you so much for joining us this morning again.
My pleasure.
Thank you to Uber for making this conversation possible.